All right, listeners, welcome to episode 18 of the Real Takes Tennis Podcast. The ATP season was took a little break towards the end of the year, and so, we felt like we should do the exact same thing too. But we're back. We have a number of guests that we're gonna queue up later in the year, which we're super stoked for. But the new year is always a great period of time because I mean, it's the start of the Australian summer. It's the start of a new year and new goals for a lot of the guys, and this is the time where theoretically everyone's really fresh, but it really feels like the end of the year was only like 2 weeks ago. So I don't really know how fresh some of these guys are, but in theory they should be ready to go. And we got the Australian Open coming up in just a couple of days, and personally this is my favorite time of the year because of the energy that Australia and Melbourne provides. So productivity for the next 2 weeks will go out the window, especially with all the spicy matchups that we're seeing. But I'm pumped. So it's gonna be a great year and a great Australian Open.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I have to say it definitely felt like a short off season. I don't know. I think there was Davis Cup right after the World
Yeah.
Tour finals, and people were going for it. So it ended up just being a couple weeks, really.
Yeah. And even for I mean for like Novak played the US Open, like played Davis Cup right after, if I'm not mistaken, then played like a couple Masters, then played ATP Tour Finals, and then went right into Davis Cup. So the guy's an absolute machine.
Different level.
Cool. Well, we wanted to start off honestly by like some of the stuff for 2024 season. We've got like a number of different questions, like a mailbag, if you will, of a number of things we're thinking about and fun storylines for the rest of the year. So we're excited to dive into some of these like topics. I think first and foremost, right? Like obviously the story of the 2023 season was Novak kind of reestablishing himself. Well, not even reestablishing himself, like continuing to establish his dominance. Carlos coming up and finally challenge and like winning that Wimbledon, which against Novak, signaling like the kind of the younger generation is officially here. And then probably just like Rafa, right? Those are Rafa not being able to play the rest of the year. And obviously he's coming back. He won't be there for the Australian Open this year, but we'll look to see him in the rest of the year. But those are kind of the main storylines from 2023, and there's like a lot of youngsters who have like kind of established themselves as you know key mainstays in on the tour and in the top 10 and top 100. And so I think honestly that's kind of where we want to start off this discussion by who the breakout players for this 2024 season are. I think maybe even before that, this is an interesting discussion in a place like I wanted to start off because in your eyes, like, what do you think a breakout player actually means? Like, what are the kind of core tools that you look at when you identify like a breakout player?
Oof, that's a tough question. I think there are tiers to this, right?
Yeah,
Because to me, a breakout player in the top 20 could be moving 10 spots. A
yeah,
breakout player outside of that could be moving anywhere between, 50 to 75 to 100 spots.
yeah,
In terms of game, it feels like it's got to be what we always talk about, which is you have all the tools, you have an aggressive mindset, um, and yeah, I mean, just being a complete player, right?
yeah,
Being able to not having a clear weakness, or if you do, just having an overwhelming strength that you can dictate with.
yeah.
So there are a few of them I can think of, but how do you define it?
Yeah, so I was gonna say exactly that, but the only thing I wanted to over-index on was really this idea of I think you have to have a weapon. You have to have a clear and established weapon that allows you to win points, right? And if you look at like all the guys in the top 10 and the top 100 even, like they have a clearly established weapon that allows them to win points. And to me, like winning points, not just over the course of like a simple like time frame, right? But like consistency over the course of a year, over the course of multiple years, you have to have a weapon and then you have to make sure that you don't have any weaknesses. And I think those are the two, to me, those are the two parts that establish like kind of like that breakout player, like a player that's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, one other thing came to mind, which is consistency too, right? I think that's
Yes.
something that's overlooked. But if
Yes.
you want to be in the top 50 or 100 on the world tour,
Yeah.
you got to be winning multiple matches per week,
Yep.
um, and not getting injured. So some level of elasticity and anti-fragility needs to be there too, right? There are guys who will show up for a bit and then get injured, and then you don't really hear from them for a bit.
Yep, it's that concept of like just like athleticism, right? Like this is something that you can both hone, but it's also like part of the talent, right? Where you can just play for a lot of matches, play a lot of matches without getting injured. The consistency part, this is something that I actually was thinking about because this is going to lead into my second part of this question of just like I think it's difficult to figure out if a player whose main weapon is their consistency is going to be successful at the next level. I found that I'm, at least personally, guys who are super consistent, I find it's like really hard to predict if they're going to be like successful at the next level.
Mm, that's a good point. Do you have examples off the top of your head of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, we can just dive into the second, like the next part of your, like the next part of the, like my question, right? Like, if you had seen Novak at 15 or 16, do you think he would have been could you predict if he would have been as good? Obviously, there's like a lot of caveats. I mean, I'm just talking about the pure game, right? Because even like in 2000, I mean, the first time I saw him was 2007, and I believe he was 19 years old, and he was already reaching the finals of Masters thousands. He won Miami the next week after losing it in Indian Wells. So the progression, when you have that level of progression, you're like on a different trajectory. But I'm not sure. I honestly am not sure if I had just seen him play, like watch him without knowing anything about his ranking, his like results, anything, if I would have been like, yeah, this guy's going to be a Grand Slam champion. Because at that time, his core basic ability was like consistency, right? And
Yeah,
so I'm not, yeah,
I mean, even fast forwarding to, let's say, a little bit later, 2010,
yeah,
2009, right? He's starting to solve some of the asthma issues, starting to solve fitness, starting to solve
yeah,
injuries. I still don't think we predicted he would win 24, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, yes, the completeness of the game was there, but he was still, I still consider him a fairly, defensive player, and obviously he has the ability to turn
yeah.
defense and offense, but there's no way I would have been able to predict him being the GOAT.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And even then, like I was just looking at some of the stuff, old stuff. His forehand, I mean, the take back was so big, like it was not compact as it was now. I think his forehand's actually gotten
The
so
second
much
serve.
better. Second serve, I mean, even like the serve itself, right? Like his
Yep.
arm was so far behind his like body, the lag was crazy.
He didn't
Yeah,
get into
that's
trophy position either. Yeah, he had a
yeah,
straight right arm.
yeah,
Never really, I mean, he had to actually change his service motion,
yeah,
which is
absolutely.
something we've talked about is very rare to be able to do, right? The same way Murray had to
Yep.
change his instincts to win Grand Slams, it's pretty tough to change technique that you've been hitting 10,000 balls with.
Yep, 100%. That's why when I was thinking about this idea of breakout player, I was like, the guys I think we're more likely to miss out on are like the guys who have like that idea of like consistency as their basic weapon, right? Because it's just so hard to determine if you think it's gonna work at the next level.
Right. And as we've had so many of these conversations now, especially interviewing some of these potential breakout players, it seems like a lot of themes stick out in terms of
Yeah.
what you mentioned, athleticism, playing multiple sports as a kid,
Yeah.
having this balance of hard work, but knowing how to be sustainable with it and not getting injured. But at the end of the day, the it factor is just, I mean, everyone know it's intangible.
Yeah.
And like Novak's got it, Rafa's got it, Fed
Yeah.
had it, but it's something that's pretty tough to quantify.
Yeah, and that's also something that we're not necessarily going to get an inside look into. I think this touches into some of the stuff that's some of the more like tennis dialogue that's started to be released now, like the UTS podcast as well as like Breakpoint, right? And I finished the most recent episode with Casper and Benoit Paire and Bublik and Breakpoint, which was covering Tommy and Zverev and Tiafoe and Fritz. And I think the second season of Breakpoint, in terms of the characters they put on, significantly better than the first. I actually saw some good insight and things that I didn't even know. But like one of the things Tommy was saying was that when he was like a kid, right after he like turned pro, basically, this guy went out like partying, and then the very next day had his doubles match with Steve Johnson, and he was so freaking hungover he couldn't see like what was on the court and everything. And that's the type of thing where if you're a professional player and you're doing that, that's on you. That's not like you can't go out there and expect to like win with that kind of mindset. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to work.
Yeah.
The second part that was also really interesting was like Benoit Paire was talking about. He had been when they were asking him how long he trains, right? Like he was saying, well, I train for like an hour and a half, without the gym session. And
I thought it would be 15 minutes.
yeah, that's the type of thing where it's just like, okay, we don't have insight into that, so it's difficult for us to like be able to quantify and predict that. But I thought those are two like humorous anecdotes that were kind of related to this. So yeah, that was funny. But cool. No, so just diving into some of the breakout players, I can kick this one off
Go for it.
if you want. So I have three players on my list that I'm like pretty high on that I think will do great things. The first, unsurprising name. I don't know if many people have heard of this guy. His name's Terrence Atmain. He's a French player. This guy has had a pretty successful back half of the year. He won two challengers. And dude, this guy, I'm telling you, 6'5" lefty, big game. Beats the brakes off the ball, has a really good serve, really good ground strokes, and is just an athlete. Like when you talk about tennis player, you're thinking of like this guy. And I had this guy's like name on my list after I watched him play last year, and he beat like he took a set off Nishioka 6-0 in the Shanghai Masters or like one of the Asian Masters, right? And then proceeded to lose the next two sets. So I was a little disappointed because I put a bet on him there. But what it was cool was I just looked and he just qualified for the Australian Open, reeled off three straight matches in a row in order to he has Medvedev first round, but and I have Medvedev winning that match, but it's good to see that because he had a really good back half of the year last year, and I think this is the start of his like kind of upward progression inside the top 100. I think he's right around a little bit outside the top 100 right now, and I'm pretty high on this guy. So I don't know if you've heard of him, if you've seen him, but guy I think will be a good player in the future.
This is an obscure first round
Yeah.
first pick for sure, but
Yeah.
I respect the research, man. I have not heard of him. I will have to do some research. You know, the French have an kind of armada going, maybe better than the Spanish, so I'm not surprised at all.
Yep. I think I would recommend doing a little deep dive on him. I like his game. The second guy I have is also a little bit of an obscure name. His name is Otto Virtanen. This is a Finnish player joining Emil Savori as part of the Finnish squad. This guy lost in five sets to Tomas Echeverry in the U.S. Open, and he like kind of similar to Terrence, right? He had a really good back half of the year, in my opinion, because I mean he lost to five in Echeverry and he beat Mackie in Davis Cup for Finland to beat the USA, right? And this is another guy who I think is kind of similar in that Terrence mold of having really good ground strokes and a really good like serve as well. He's 6'4" or 6'3", I believe. Super fluid player. Like there's no wasted motions in a lot of like his core game. And I think that's the type of style that like allows you to have success on the Pro Tour. Unfortunately, he didn't qualify for the Australian Open, but I remember watching him when I had when Echeverry and him were playing, and I was super impressed with his like the quality of his ball and like how he was playing. So another guy who to watch out for. Have you heard of this brother?
I think I briefly saw him in Davis Cup. Now you're ringing a bell
Yeah.
when Finland beat the United States. I just remember it being a big upset and being disappointed in Mackie and not
Yeah.
really thinking twice about who he played, but
Yeah.
I believe you, man.
Cool. The third and final guy I have. This one you'll for sure. We've talked about this guy before. Matteo Arnaldi. I'm super high on this guy. I actually think his serve isn't as good in my opinion as like the rest of his game, but I think his ground strokes are absolutely incredible. And he obviously like joins the rest of the Italians and like has as part of that like squad, right? And fourth round at the Open. He's already kind of like established himself as like a breakout player because he's like in the top 50, but I think this guy's going to be seeded by the end of the year in Grand Slams because like he's incredible. 22 years old and like to have that fluid of a game already. Like he beat Casper on clay last year. I think he's going to be seeded. Like I can already like to me he's already better than some of the guys in the top 30, so I'm quite high on him.
Nice. That's a good top three, much more exciting than probably whatever I'm gonna pick on the fly right here.
Go for it. Tell me what you got.
Um, I'm probably gonna work more top down,
Okay.
instead of kind of the way you approach it bottoms up.
Yeah.
Um, I got it. I think this is Yannick's year. I
Okay.
know I'm preaching to the choir right here, but I think man, I mean, he's been putting it together, and that rebound after losing the World Tour Finals and then beating Joker in Davis Cup, I think
Yeah.
shows some serious mettle from
Yeah.
from his standpoint. So, I mean, it's tough to call number 4 in the world a breakout player, but I mean, if he wins a slam and prevents, this is one of our future questions, Djokovic from winning all four, I
Yeah.
would count that as a massive accomplishment.
No, 100%. And there, I mean, it's like we're talking about, right? Like there's levels to everything. And the difference between being a contender versus actually winning a Grand Slam in this era with all the guys that Yannick has to place, like that's a step up. That's a breakout for sure. And so, I mean, dude, obviously, like, I'm with it. If Yannick wins a major that this year, that'll be incredible. I don't know if he will, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And then number 2, another really top ranked player, but I gotta call out Grigor Dimitrov. This
Yeah.
guy, he's been really, I mean, not to kind of preface another question that we have, but which nice guys will flourish slash do nice guys finish last? Grigor has a different look in his eyes. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a guy who 5, 6, 7 years ago, he kind of had a Gael Monfils vibe where he was more of an entertainer. He was not reaching his potential, but it was all about the handshakes for him at the end of the matches. I just feel like he had the friendliest handshakes. It's like, dude, show the killer instinct, and you can see it in his eyes now. He's trying to win a Grand Slam. He's making a push right here. Um, he's got all the tools. Obviously, he's got the talent. He's got the fitness. He's got the mobility. He's got the sustainability in his game. Got the variety, even though he's has a one hander. I got to call him out. I mean, first title in what, 6 years at
Yeah. 6 years.
Brisbane,
Yeah.
7 years. He's looking really good, and I think he keeps talking in his uh, post match press conferences about how this has been a very emotional last 6 months. I'm not sure the reason behind that. Maybe something going on in the personal life, but something seems to have inspired him over the last year, and I think it's showing in his game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, dude, beating Holger in the finals, like he's balling out. I think the only other point I'll add to that is like he has the type of game that's translatable on all three surfaces. Like, yes, he has a one hand backhand, but that slices neutralizes a lot of high balls, very difficult to attack, and he's looking to hit the forehand, right? And I agree. I think he's got all the tools to have a really resurgent year, and I think he'll have a good like he has the chance to break back into the top 10, right? Which is like another one of our questions. So I agree with you on that one.
Yep. And then, I've looked at the top 200, and I gotta say, no one else really stands out. And again, we talked about this at the very beginning, right? It's going to be hard to tell who that person is who has the intangibles uh,
Yeah.
longer term. But a couple guys that stood out to me, kind of, I mean, I'll just say one of them, Roman Safulin. This guy
Yeah.
wears like unbranded clothes. He's just a blue collar grinder, 36 in the world right now. And just, I
Yeah.
mean, he just bludgeons the ball.
Yeah.
Um,
Beats the
he
shit
has
out of it.
he has big wins. He has close matches with top players. He's probably a guy that no one wants to see in their section of the draw because he just hovers under the radar.
Yeah.
Um, I would be scared of him. I think the question is he's a little bit tough to read emotionally, and I
Yeah.
just wonder how he will fare in the pressure situations. I think that's the question that it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, first tournament of the year, beats Shelton, Papiron, Arnaldi, loses to Rune in two tight sets. He's got it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And like this, speaking on the mental piece, right? Like this is last year. I think he played Zverev in the towards the end of the year. He played Zverev in the final, up a set, up a break, and loses that match, right? So that's part of that mental aspect you're talking about against the best guys in the world. How do you close those types of matches out? But excellent pick, and not to foreshadow some of the Australian Open stuff, but I have him making a pretty deep run because he's got a good draw.
I could see it. And yeah, I mean, the draw is, there's so many good first round matches, and
Yeah.
you never know what's going to end up happening here other than maybe one or two guys.
Yeah, everyone's got a chance. Cool, awesome. Any other breakout guys you wanted to shout out?
No, I don't know if this is the next section, but I think the segment that this almost begs to bring up to me is like who the opposite of breakout
Yeah,
players are, right? Who's our
yeah,
on our shit list, who
yeah.
kind of overaccomplished in 2023 that we'll probably see a decline or maybe just status quo performance from.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my exact next segment. I can kick this one off again. I don't know that this person overachieved in 2023, but I do think people have started to figure him out. He hasn't been as consistent as he was in 2023, and I think he will fall out of the top 10, and that's Stefanos Tsitsipas. I just don't see it anymore. I think it's guys are too good. There's too much going around him. Like, I mean, his coaches, he was working with Phil Poussis, stopped working with him, then worked with him, then stopped. Like, I don't know. I don't like the vibes in that section, and I think guys have started to figure him out. And he's got a tough one with Berrettini, I think, in the Australian Open first round anyway, right? And so obviously, never hope guys regress, but like, yeah, I don't see it anymore.
Agreed completely. And I would just add, it seems like the relationship stuff too has caused a drop in performance. I don't know if he's as focused on tennis anymore, which, is not it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep, 100%. Any other guys you think gonna take that step backwards?
Yeah, the reason why I brought this question up, because as I'm looking at the top 100, top 200, I think there are more guys like that than potential breakout players, knowing that,
Yeah.
there's a stranglehold on the top few spots with Djokovic and Alcaraz and Medvedev and
Yeah.
Sinner, really. I would consider them the big four right now. Um, I think a few that come to mind is, obviously we love Ben Shelton. And
Yeah.
I think he has the it factor and he performs at the slams, but when you have two massive results that you have to back up,
Yeah.
in the Australian Open and the US Open on hard courts, and the other two slams are French Open and Wimbledon, and they'll be your second times respectively playing on the surfaces. It's going to be, I mean, I would love to see him prove me wrong. And I've always said his trajectory is up. I
Yeah.
foresee a bit of a sophomore slump this year where,
Yeah.
like you said, guys maybe start to figure him out. I think he will progress in 2025.
Yeah.
Um, whether he stays in the top 20, that's going to be tough. He has a lot of
Yeah.
points to defend in big
Defend.
tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I actually think his game will continue to evolve and get better because more reps are better, but I completely agree with you. He just has a lot of points to defend. Like it's semifinals, like in two tournaments. That's extremely tough. And he's got a tough he potentially could play Novak in the round of 16. So it's just hard to like be able to defend all those points. So and I
Yep.
mean he's played two tournaments, I think, at the start of this year. I don't think I think he lost to Taro Daniel, if I'm not mistaken,
He
yesterday.
just
So I
did. Yeah. It
mean,
was an
yeah,
exciting match, saved a bunch of match points, but yeah, I mean, you got to be beating Taro Daniel to
yeah,
to defend your points.
absolutely.
Semifinal and
And
quarterfinal Grand Slam performances.
absolutely. And I mean, we obviously love Taro. He's always one of our inspirations. But yeah, that the 6'4" lefty with the massive forehand, you gotta take care of business there against the grinder.
Yep. And then not to bag on the Americans, but I think actually Chris Eubanks is another guy where he had a lot of points to
Mm,
defend from Wimbledon, and people are starting again. You talk about weapons. He's
yeah,
got the serve, but I was gonna add a wrinkle to that answer, which is when your serve is your weapon, you're way more susceptible to the ebbs and flows of the game. And I think
yeah,
data in particular is revolutionizing how people return. And I think it's clear people are figuring out how to return a serve. I mean, Botic dismantled him first round here before Australia. I think he had a really good year. I think he is dangerous. Do I think he stays in the hovering in the 30s? Uh, Not sure about that.
yeah. That's a great point, and it honestly leads into this idea of like the Americans, like in general, right? Like Tiafoe, Eubanks, Giron, McDonald, Fritz, and I'm forgetting Scott Tiafoe. Oh, yeah, well, no, Tommy. I mean, all those guys, right? Like I think Americans took a big leap last year and or like
Yep.
continued to it's like, I mean Tommy reached the semis, like Tommy reached the round of 16 quarter, like Shelton, like guys started to continue to play better,
Yep.
right? And reach major in major tournaments. But what do we think about the state of American tennis moving forward?
Great question. I mean, there's like you just mentioned, right? There are so many names in the top 100. Yeah, outside of that top tier, you got Mackey knocking on the door, who's like kind of a perennial top 40, top 50 player because he's just so solid. I don't see
Yeah.
him going past fourth round at slams, but I mean, you never know. I just don't think he has the weapons that we've talked about. You've
Yeah.
got JJ, who I've always been a fan of. He has the weapons, but I
Yeah.
think it's just a little bit still working on the maturity and consistency, and just doesn't have a ton of experience yet. Behind him is Jerome, again, good player, perennial in the 60 to 80 range, but do I see him making a deep run? Probably not. And
Yeah.
then really behind him is Mickelson, who I think
Yes.
of them all, of those last three that I mentioned, does have a lot of potential, right? Because he's got the big game and also the chip on his shoulder, having kind of foregone the college route. I think
College
he has a
route.
lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, especially like being 19 years old and turning pro. He has like he's going to get a lot of experience very, very quickly, and that's the type of thing that's like bound to benefit him. I will say the guy that we haven't talked about that I'm still super high on, that I still think has the highest potential out of
Yep.
all the Americans, is Sebastian Gorda.
Yep.
And I think this guy is, I mean, when you talk about fluidity in his game and what his potential upside is, and this kind of leads into like some of our other questions, right? About around like nice guys and like them having that kind of killer mentality. And I actually, after watching like the break point and you see some of the stuff that Tommy and Taylor and Francis are talking about, I actually firmly believe like the Americans really, really push each other. They're really, really competitive, really, really fiery. And I would like to see some of that from Korda as well, right? Because I mean, we've seen him like I or at least I saw him last year, play Fusovic, losing five. Like I think he's got the upside, and this is, kind of his time to establish himself as like the number one American, because I think out of all the guys, his game is the best in my opinion.
I mean, I can't disagree with that, but again, for me, like the it factor is the thing that I put the most weight on, and I
Yeah.
just I can't get over the fact that it's Ben who has that more than anyone
Yeah.
else, right? I mean, the way
Yep.
he dominated Francis at the Open and just made Francis look like the inexperienced player,
Player. Yeah.
uh, that was a little disappointing to me because I really did think Francis was the other guy with that
Yeah.
it factor. So we'll see if he gets it back this year. But
Yep.
I agree with you. Game wise, I mean, it's not even close in terms of completeness and fluidity. This
Yeah.
guy's like another kind of baby Federer.
I was legitimately going to say the exact same thing. Like, dude, I really think this guy could be like that next. Well, when people fall in love with Federer, right, it's because of his like the simple, like he's just gliding on the court, right? This guy has like the exact same kind of wow factor that could really like get fans and get crowd energy and crowd support behind him, right? And like that's, I mean, dude, he can use that anywhere he goes. He's got that universal like kind of admiration, or he could have that universal admiration. So a ton of upside. We'll see how it goes, and not to foreshadow some stuff, but hopefully we can get the chance to talk to him down the line, which would be awesome.
100%.
Cool. Kind of switching gears to the goats of our time. I mean, we obviously saw that Rafa's pulling out of the Australian Open due to the hip, and not the same injury that he suffered last year, but in a similar area. And that kind of begs the question: does Rafa win a major this year? Is he? I mean, obviously, I think both of us are going to say the same thing, in that he has like the best chance for him to win a major is the French. And so if he does it, if he wins a major, that'll be the place to do it. But I mean, dude, I'll just kick this one off. Like I don't think his body has the ability to play 5 set matches. Like if he's only if he can only play like 3 matches, and in the third set of like earlier this year and in Brisbane, right? He has to like stop playing for a little period of time. I just don't think his body can like hold up, right? And so I think that's the only reason I would see him not winning a major. Game wise, it's clear he's clearly like there, right? It's just the physicality and like the body.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say during the offseason when we saw those hype videos come out of him hitting the rock and just
Yeah.
working fields in the offseason and other guys who came out to the Rafa Academy, I was pretty hopeful. I was pretty surprised. I mean, he looked so good in his first
Yeah.
couple matches against Kubler and team. And then
Yeah.
obviously even against Thompson, the dude had tons of match points,
Match points.
tons
Yeah.
of opportunities to win that match. But I agree with you. I wouldn't even say he has a chance at winning the other slams. His only chance is at the French. And like you said, no way he's playing seven, fives, best of fives. It's gonna go to one of the other two or three.
Yeah, it honestly the point you mentioned of like Fields and like Gasquet and some of those guys training at the Rafa Academy is actually really funny because like just think about it from their standpoint. Like, dude, this guy is like still like one of the biggest rivals of their generation, and they're just like going out to his academy to help him get better while he's like waxing them. This kind of reminds me of like when MJ was coming back after that baseball hiatus, and he was basically like shooting Space Jam 2 or Space Jam 1 or one of them, and he created a gym in the place where he was supposed to, act and everything. And dudes would just come in there. And I remember now hearing that after the fact, being like, players would be like, I can't believe we helped him get ready to like, destroy us by like going over there and practicing with him. So it's got like very similar vibes, which I find like really funny.
Yeah, and I mean it's only Rafa who can elicit that type of
That
reaction from the other players.
100%. Cool. And obviously, speaking of Rafa, we have to bring Novak into the picture. And I mean, 3 out of 4 last year had a chance to win the fourth or win Wimbledon. Does Novak win all 4 this year?
I would have to say yes.
Come on.
Yeah, I just think I mean Australian it's the Novak Invitational. He
Yeah.
bags this without easily.
Yeah.
And really on clay, I mean the way he has dismantled Carlos, I feel in the past on clay. I actually don't think clay is Carlos's best surface. So I don't see Carlos as a threat. I also don't see the other kind of big players except for Rude as a threat, and we know Rude doesn't have a killer instinct. So I I mean I would say that's two out of the four right there.
There. Yeah.
Wimbledon has also, I mean, he's also dominated on Wimbledon, somehow translated his game so well to grass, as we've discussed. And then it's a fast hard court. I mean, I just who's gonna beat him? Who's gonna beat him? Maybe like I don't think so. I don't think
Yeah.
so, man.
Yeah. No, I think he gets all 4 this year. I mean, he's 1 break point away. I mean, he was up 1-0 in that fifth set, right? He had break point chances on that backhand or forehand to on the swinging forehand to
Yep,
go up 2-0 and like close that. I mean, he goes up 2-0 in the fifth set. That's
it's a wrap.
likely lights out for Carlos, right? And I mean, 1 break point away last year from winning all 4 potentially. Like, yeah, I think he gets it done this year. I mean, he's obviously been in this position like now a couple times with or winning 3 out of the 4 and playing the finals of the fourth one, right? And so I want him to get it. I think he's the man's given everything to this game. Like, yeah, I want him to get it. And I think it probably poses the question, right? Like, who's the person who poses like the biggest challenge to Novak? I mean, Carlos is probably like the guy that comes to our mind, and I mean, Yannick is probably now the other one, right? But like even then, it's still unproven in like the Grand Slam because that's where you have to do it. You can't just do it in like World Tour Finals or Miami or Indian Wells. It has to be done on the big stage.
Yep. I mean, and even Medvedev, the thing with him is like people have started figuring him out as we discussed, right? Fast hard court, they're gonna swing you wide. He's 20 feet behind the baseline, serving
Baseline.
volley.
Yeah.
Djokovic is gonna throw that in on every big point, and I don't see Medvedev beating him in a big match, because of that glaring weakness, unless he's changed his approach in the offseason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Djokovic this year. And, I think we saw it really his biggest opponent is himself. We saw a couple
Yes.
inklings of fragility with the elbow, which has been an injury that he's had a couple times, but or elbow or wrist, kind of some, which are pretty annoying injuries because he probably feels so good cardio wise, legs probably
Yeah.
feel so good.
Yeah.
Um, that's the only thing I think that's preventing him from winning all four,
Yeah.
not his opponents.
Yeah, 100%. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think hopefully his wrist is healed in time for Australian Open. But even if it's not, the man's a freaking warrior. So I think he'll be just fine. Cool. This is an interesting question. I'm actually kind of curious we haven't talked about this, but who do you think the player with the most to prove this year is?
Wow.
I can kick this one off if you want
Yeah,
to think about it.
go for it.
Okay, so I have two names here. I think the players with the most approved this year, number one, Alexander Zverev. I mean, this guy has been inside the top 10 for like a number of years. If we talk about the completeness of his game, right? Like no matter what we think of him, the guy's game is incredible. His backhand is arguably one of the best backhands, the most fluid backhand I've seen. He's got a great forehand, like he's 6'6", really good mover, good serve. He's got every single shot in the book, and he's had such an incredible amount of success in a very like it's like still while still being so young. I think this is the year to prove for him to prove that like he's actually capable of taking that next step and winning a Grand Slam. Because the answer now is not he's won gold medals, he's won Masters thousands, he's beaten the best players in the world. This is the time for him to like win a Grand Slam, right? Because Carlos, Holger, Yannick, they're only going to continue to get better. Novak is like starting to age. You need to make you need to take advantage of the opportunity you have, right? And I think this is the year for him to step up because it is, I mean, ankles healed. After this, if he doesn't win one this year or next, it's over. He's not going to win a major. I don't see it happening. So that's why I really have Zverev high on my list for trying to, for with something to prove this year.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of fluidity in game, I can't disagree with you on ball striking, but the
Yeah.
thing with him is I feel he has a similar issue as Medvedev, which is just
Yeah.
court positioning. I mean, the guy has these long strokes. He's that, I mean, he's nearly hitting the back fence on his backswing in Indian Wells on the practice courts.
Yeah.
Um, does he find a way to change that? I think is the recipe for him going
Yeah.
deep in a slam. And I unfortunately hold the US Open 2020 against him. I mean, that was
Yeah.
the worst slam final of the last 23 years, right?
Yeah.
Since Coria choked to Gaudio in the French Open. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see I see what you're saying. He has a lot to prove. I don't think he's gonna be the guy to do it.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. And I think one of the things that the Breakpoint season two showed a little insight into him is like I it's clear he has kind of this sense of he doesn't necessarily focus on what he has to do on the court. Like obviously we've seen some of the stuff when Medvedev in Monte Carlo where he took a break. He's just doing little things to kind of distract. I don't know if Medvedev is intentionally doing this stuff to distract Zverev, but Zverev got distracted, right? And that's the type of thing where like I mean, even Kyrgios in against Tsitsipas in Wimbledon was just like, mate, if you're like focusing on that stuff instead of me, guys can rattle you, and that's not going to help you win a Grand Slam. Like you have to just be focused on yourself, doing what you need to do. And so I think like the mental aspect, obviously, and like the it factor you're talking about are the things that he needs to like lock in order to like win a Grand Slam, right? Because if you can be distracted by little shit like that, that's not going to help you win a Grand Slam.
Interesting pick.
The second one I want to pick, Taylor Fritz. Again, right? Another guy who's been in the top 15 for the past like couple years. He's been on that. He's been in that top 15. Everyone knows he's like a really dangerous opponent, but he just hasn't proven it in Grand Slams, right? Like, I mean, 2 years ago he lost to Brandon Holt in the US Open in first round after having like a really good summer like last year. I mean, second round at the Australian Open, lost to Popperin, Wimbledon, lost to I don't even remember who. And then US Open had like a pretty cakewalk of a draw until he lost to Novak, if I'm not mistaken. So he just hasn't gone deep in the majors, and for his ranking and for what his upside is, I just think he has a lot to prove because at some level, if you continue to like not succeed in majors while having that level, while like continually being in the top 10, it gets to you, right? And I think he has a lot to prove.
Yeah, he's also the torch bearer for America,
American
being the
tennis,
highest
yeah.
ranked American, and for him to kind of, no offense, but shit the bed in a lot of slams.
Yeah.
Second, third round, most of the, I mean, for a lot of slams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has a lot to prove, but again, I don't think he's gonna break through the guys that we've been talking about
Talking about,
as the
yeah.
leaders of the sport. He just, to me, he seems a little frail out there. Like his first step feels a little frail. His movement
Yeah.
is just not on par with any of the guys in the top 20, to be honest.
Yeah.
He hits a huge ball, but that's not enough in today's game.
Yeah. It's a type of thing where he has like I think his movement is good for like a 6'5" player. It's not great. And it's not as good as some of the other guys who are tall like him and can cover the court, right? And I think that's one of his biggest problems.
Another good pick.
Uh anyone else that you have your eye on that you think could have something to prove?
Yeah, I think for me, as I look at this list in terms of talent, I think it's Foki, and I'm surprised his name hasn't come up yet.
Yeah.
He's got the game. I mean, we've seen what he can do, and I just lost so much respect for him after the underhand serve at Wimbledon against Holger Rune, choking that one away.
Yeah.
Um, he's a perennial top 20 player who just he could, in my opinion, I'm looking at the guys in front of him. Cerundolo, Humbert, Manarino, Nori, Jerry. He's in front of those guys for sure in talent. Um, so yeah, but like we've said with the last two, is he going to do it this year, or is he going to be taking the first class flights straight to Ibiza after quarterfinal losses? It's a hard choice, and I don't blame him if he does.
Yeah, I mean, for the upside that we're talking about, just for anyone listening, take a look at him practicing with Carlos in, I want to say Shanghai or in Asia. This man was hitting the flattest balls at incredible quality, and Carlos was getting flustered by them. Like it's one of the things we've kind of seen now, where like flatter balls, especially against Carlos, those deep penetrating balls, those are hard for anyone to deal with, and Foki's able to hit them so consistently. I mean, he's hitting through guys. He has that type of ability, right? And I mean, those five names that you just listed, I'm actually shocked they're in front of him, right? And obviously, that's a function of just like consistency and like playing more tournaments perhaps, but like yeah, in terms of pure upside and like talent, yeah, Bookie is significantly higher than them.
And then I mentioned his name, but another guy I'm surprised hasn't really come up is Holger Rune to me. As love him or hate him, this is
Yeah.
another dude with, to me, he has the it factor. He
Yeah.
gets himself in these tight situations and he finds a way out 95% of the time.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes it's not pretty, and sometimes I wonder if it's more the opponent choking, but at some point, if he's doing it consistently and coming back, you have to give credit where it's due.
Yeah.
And he, yes, again, this is another guy whose reputation in my mind was marred by just straight tanking in Indian Wells against Wawrinka last
Yeah.
year. Um, After Wawrinka just kind of got in his head a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he's evolved past that. I think the coaching switch is a good thing. And unfortunately, I can see him being the other guy other than Yannick to do some serious damage this year.
Yeah. And what's crazy about Holger, like I think he has the it factor and he has the mentality where I think it almost works against him too much, where he's just like he's not focused the entire match, right? Like he clearly is not afraid of the big moments. He's not afraid to like go out there and take it. I don't think he gets like necessarily that tight, but I just even what the breakpoint stuff showed, like he's not focused like the entire match, and that kind of can mess with him a little bit, right? And like I mean, Pat, they were showing clips of like Patrick just being like, dude, don't worry about all the other stuff. Just like focus on what you have to do, continue battling, and you'll be just fine. But yeah,
But the other thing that I think he has, where I would compare him to Djokovic a little bit, is he seems to thrive off a little bit of negative energy.
Nick, for
Where
sure.
when the crowd's against him, when people are against him, he has that chip on his shoulder where he tries to prove people wrong. And I think
Yeah.
that is starting to become one of the pieces of the puzzle, in my opinion, to breaking through into that next level.
Yeah, 100%. You know that these types of the guys who like clearly love the game a lot, who are training really hard, it's only it can only go up from here, right? Like once you like get those things under control, it's sky's the limit, right? And I think he's still I mean he's still like what 20, 21 years old, so
He's
a
20.
lot of time 20? Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. Lot of time to figure it out and he is only going to continue to get better.
Yep. You got to be a
Cool.
little bit chippy like him, I think. I think that's
I think so.
that's
Yeah.
part of the equation.
Yeah.
Is being competitive, is like letting people get under your skin and, you know,
Yeah.
letting that motivate and fuel you.
Yeah. What I was gonna say, one of the guys that you just reminded me of that we haven't talked about at all with something to prove, Felix.
Oh my God. Great
I
pick.
do, yeah, I do think he's got something to prove, right? Because I mean, obviously we've like kind of joked about like first round, we always had the other guy, right? And when you talk about upside, and I mean, I think athletically there's a lot of upside, but right now it's the same. I mean, we just the same thing, right? He hits the same kind of ball, deep, heavy, like, stands a couple feet beyond the baseline, just really heavy, and doesn't really know what to do after that, right? And so I think that's the type of thing where your mind has to catch up with your athleticism. And I mean, you have to make advantage of like, because I think honestly, like game wise, if you just look at his pure strokes and everything, I think he's got a better game than Holger. But I don't think he's got the same like mental approach and like tact and problem solving and understanding what to do when things change, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
At the very least, it's comparable, right? He has
Yeah,
maybe a key difference is the second serve, in my opinion. I don't think he's found that consistency yet. And as some of the best players say, you're only as good as your second serve.
second serve.
But
Yeah,
in terms of first serve, both wings, I don't like his backhand personally. But yeah, I mean, he has the talent, he has the movement, he has the athleticism. It's just there are only so many times you can hit the exact same ball with the
same
same
ball.
spin, with the same height over the net.
Yeah,
Um, and the same depth. And,
yeah.
it'll take you to 27 in the world like he is now. Do I see him changing it this year? I think it's a blessing and a curse, his talent, right? Because like we've discussed, he's one of those guys who probably out talented and bodied people in the juniors and never really had to gut out and grind out wins. And I
Yeah,
think that's where people are going to overtake him now, where
yeah.
they have caught up in that ability, but they have another element and dimension to their game that he doesn't, and it's very hard to develop that dimension, in my opinion, later on.
It's a
Like you can
type.
just see it
Yeah,
in you can see it in a player's slice. I think
yeah,
that to me is the indicator of your ability to grind. Like when
yeah.
you put a continental, can you beat me with a continental grip? Um, do you know how to junk? Do you know how to hack? And you can see it in Ben's game too a little bit. He's still like he breaks his wrist a lot on his slice.
Yeah.
Um, that's the litmus test for me.
I was legitimately gonna say it, dude. Dimitrov is the type of player that would give Felix nightmares.
Oh
You
yeah.
chip that backhand to like backhand to backhand. I mean, dude, I think Grigor loves that because like there's no way. I mean, Felix isn't gonna go line there. He's just gonna bunt it back cross court, and that's like easy pickings for Dimitrov to do inside in, inside out, anything he wants.
I need to rewatch some Federer videos, but I'm gonna say something controversial. I think Dimitrov's slice right now is better than Federer's. It
Federer's
literally looks like a heat-seeking missile when I mean, it's literally going down before it's going up, and
yeah.
just humming over the net like a hovercraft.
Yeah, you know, it was the match that made me realize that like how powerful of a weapon the slice is. It was that match with that we watched with Stevie and Karatsev 2 or 3 years ago. Dude, that thing was like a knife. That thing was literally saying skit so low to the ground, and I mean Karatsev couldn't do anything. He couldn't attack off of it. He couldn't like that was nasty. That was when I was like, oh, this is a shot that every player needs to have because that's so difficult to deal with.
Yep.
Um, awesome. That was great. Kind of the next thing that I think I wanted to jump into was who's a player that we think will drop or enter the top 10. I mean, we're kind of taping this on
Mm,
the heels of De Minaur making the top 10.
his
So
debut.
yeah, his debut. So we can take him out of this picture because it's just like so new. But I kind of like in this in the theme of like the regression stuff we were talking about, I think Stefanos Tsitsipas drops out of the top 10, and I think Karen Khachanov enters the top 10. I think
Great call.
yeah, I really like Karen's game. I mean, obviously we've seen him make semis, make quarters, make really deep runs and slams. And this is another guy, right? When we talk about upside of game and like what he offers, he's 6'6" with a massive serve and like really good ground strokes, right? Obviously, his forehand is pretty like Western, so it's like that slice is like the type of ball that like would really affect him. But I he's beaten so many good players over the years, and I think he's been struggling with injuries, which is why he's not in the top 10, but I think he returns to the top 10.
Totally
Yeah,
fair switch.
yeah,
I like that call. I think, this is related to a question that we've kind of alluded to now. Do nice guys finish last?
yeah,
Uh, the guys who come to my mind are Hubie and Rude. I think Hubie
yeah.
falls out of the top 10 this year. I mean, yes, he has a big serve, but I could easily see Dimitrov or maybe an American dethroning him there.
I like that pick. I think that's a great one. And I think I mean we've already touched on this, so let's just jump into it. Nice guys and the ability to be a killer on the tour. I think I'll just preface this, right? Like one of the things Francis was talking about in Breakpoint is just like you can't be friends on the court, man. Like guys are too competitive. Like I mean we've heard Vasil talk about like yeah, guys are willing to kill you before they let you give you their win, right? Like or let them beat you, right? Like this is a brutal sport and you have to have a certain level of aggressive mentality and in order to like win. You can't just be buddy buddy. And I mean, talk what's on your mind?
It's just those two in particular. I think they're
Yeah.
the ones that I I think I know they have a competitive side to them, but
Yeah.
it doesn't it doesn't reflect in I think some of the big matches where
Yeah.
it's tough to tell if they really want it with their lives.
Yeah.
Especially when you juxtapose them against Djokovic or Carlos, who's literally gonna, like you said, die before giving the win.
Yeah. What do you think you need to see from them on the court in order to like make them convinced to you that they're like a bad dude? Not bad dude, but you know what I mean, have that instinct.
I think for me, it's like in the eyes, man. I can
Yeah.
see it in Casper. He just looks afraid sometimes, and you just you can't have an ounce of that. It has to be I'm trying to kill the person across from the net,
Yeah.
across the net from me. That the thought of fear and hesitation shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be like, you're fist pumping to your team and it doesn't look like fist pump to the other guy once in a while. Like show him that you're
Yeah.
there and you're trying to get in his head. If you're just
Yeah.
gonna play by the rules, play by the book, in this sport, I mean, people are gonna eat you alive.
And to me, I was gonna say like adding on to the eyes bit, it's the energy, it's the vibe that you give off. And I actually think the person who one of the people who we've never talked about this person, but the person who's really, really good, and you know, people were afraid of her each time they played her, Serena Williams.
Yep.
She was yelling and like her energy was like people were afraid of playing her, right?
Yep.
Obviously her game was incredible, but like her natural energy, no one wanted to play that. And like the guys who are like that I think, I mean, no one wants to play them. No one wants them. There has to be that fear element, right? And like those are the types of people that I think are really successful. Um, Awesome. I think this is the final question I think I wanted to talk about was what's the thing you'd most want to see happen this year? Obviously, there's like a lot of different themes and stuff that could happen, right? That I think would be nice, like Rafa winning a Grand Slam, Yannick winning a Grand Slam, American at the Open, like De Minaur reaching like a major final. Like there's like a number of different things that would be nice, but I'm talking and those are like, those could be realistic. I don't know about Demon are reaching like a final, but like the other ones and I don't know about American winning an open, but like in the realm of maybe like more unrealistic possibilities perhaps, or even realistic, like whichever way you want to take this question. What's the thing you'd most want to see happen this year? I think I have a good one, so I'll go last on this one. I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, I mean, what would be intriguing to me is seeing one of the guys from the previous generation make a run. I'm
One. Okay.
talking Gael,
Yeah.
Stan,
Yeah.
uh, Gasquet, just showing that Father Time can be put off for a little bit longer than people think.
Yeah.
Um, that would be interesting. Obviously, the first thing that came to mind is Djokovic not winning everything. I mean, him not winning. I mean, if he won one or two, I think that would be pretty awesome for the
Yeah.
transition of the sport.
Yeah.
Um, those are really the first two that come to mind.
Interesting. I got one that I think you'll love. The thing that I would most want to see happen this year, Nick Kyrgios wins a Grand Slam final. Wins a Grand Slam. Dude, I would go bananas, dude. I would
Yeah,
can you imagine the vibes like Kyrgios wins? And I mean, he's gonna beat he has to beat someone sick to do it, right? He's not
right.
gonna just that would be
And he
incredible for
would.
me.
He would.
Yeah, he would. I mean, he's literally all the things we were talking about. The it factor, the game, the upside, the movement. He's got all of that, right? Maybe the ability to play like multiple 5 set matches over 14 days. That's the question mark. But I would love to see that. I think that to me is like he does that, he can do whatever he wants. He can retire, he can
Yep.
go do whatever he wants. I would love to see that happen this year.
I would love to see him just step back on the court. I mean,
Yeah, too.
I think that's so far out of the realm of possibility right now. The guy is on Jay Shetty and Trevor Noah's podcast. He's just doing his run. He's been commentating on Tennis Channel. I
Yeah.
think, I mean, look, he's definitely the guy with the talent, but I totally forgot about him because,
I know. That's why
he
like,
just
yeah.
he's just not present in the game right now. And it does feel like he's getting ready for the next chapter in a lot of ways with all these. It feels like a farewell tour with all these podcasts. I don't know what is up next. I feel like he's trying to figure that out too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would love to see that, but and I don't want to add to the noise that he always talks about with the media, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it, just from the Jay Shetty podcast, right? I listened to the entire thing, and
Yeah.
it just sounded like a lot of complaining about not liking tennis, and woe is me about that. And again, I respect he has had a lot of trouble and he's overcome a lot of it, but I just to me personally, I don't think the way of overcoming those issues is to deny your talent and
Yeah.
accept mediocrity. I
Yeah.
think it's to really just like give it one more shot, man. Like leave it all on the table.
Yeah.
I think uh, there's a lot of delusion when someone says they wouldn't have regrets, or that if they were to go back in time, they wouldn't have picked up a tennis racket. Like, dude, I mean, that's really that's kind of an offensive statement because it gave him everything that he has right now.
Yeah. 100%. And this honestly feeds really well. And obviously Nick will kind of appreciate this because one of my favorite quotes of all time that's written in the workout room in the Boston Celtics workout room is which hurts more, the pain of hard work or the pain of regret? And that's like the perfect type of thing where, yeah, right now and maybe 5 years ago, you could be happy with yourself if you like, you could just be like okay with it if you like put in hour and a half practices and called it a day. I promise you 20 years down the line, you will not feel that way. And obviously we're not 40, but like I think we know like that's the type of thing that when you look back, you're gonna want to be like at peace knowing that you gave every single thing you had with the talent you had.
Yeah, and the way, again, not to totally belabor this topic, but the way he was talking about and making some of these excuses just felt like just continuous defense mechanisms. Like,
Yeah.
are you really looking at your core and telling me you wouldn't want to feel like you left it all out there? It just feels like he's still scratching the surface of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And he hasn't really dug in fully. And again, everyone's mind works differently. At the end of the podcast, he was talking about how hard it is for him to maintain a routine. And, these are everyone's different, but it
Yeah.
definitely feels like the way he talks about tennis is it's just like a defense mechanism
Yeah.
to assume that he's not gonna, that he doesn't want to give it everything.
Maybe that's also the way that's his like mechanism for also just like relieving pressure on himself, right? Like
Yeah.
I actually firmly believe it's not easy to deal with the media scrutiny, the pressure, like all those things. Those things get to you, and that's like not a like no one should have to like deal with that, but it is part of his job. It's part of his like life, right? And like that's he's gonna have to like figure out how to deal with that
Yep.
to get it. So
And I mean, it does seem like 99 out of the other 100 guys are have to a degree figured it out, or at least are not in the press as much.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's tough, but yeah, no, I thought you'd appreciate that storyline because I was like, dude, we haven't talked about this guy since forever. And
yep.
obviously that's because he's been injured. So I thought like, dude, that would be yeah, I thought that'd be a fun one to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, whatever he ends up doing, we'll support for sure.
Yeah.
The Jay Shetty podcast really threw me off, man.
Threw you off.
I was very thrown off by like just the yeah, just the
Yeah.
excuses.
Yeah. Um I stopped listening to some of his podcasts because I've noticed he tends to cover the same topics over and over again. And I understand it's like a core part of his life. It's what's happened, but I feel yeah, I feel similarly to you, obviously. So we'll see what the future holds for him. Cool. Awesome. Any other questions you think come to mind for 2024 season? Anything you think relevant to
I think
talk about?
I think that was a great list.
Cool. Awesome. Maybe we Australian Open is starting day after tomorrow, or maybe tomorrow at 4 p.m. I always forget. I think maybe a good next topic is to dive a little bit into the draw. Obviously, I mean, there's a ton of popcorn matches. I mean, Hanfin Monfils, Murray Echeverry, Bautista Agut Shelton. I mean, Berrettini Tsitsipas, like Evan Sonego, Mackie Shank. I mean, those are there's like 10 more that I could talk about that I haven't. But I mean, those were some of the matches. Maybe let's just start off with any other matches that particularly caught your eye in terms of what you're looking forward to for these popcorn first round matches.
Oh man, I mean it's like you said, mouth watering left and
Yeah.
right. One I think the seed with the hardest first round looks like it's actually Sinner Botic. That's a brutal first round matchup for Sinner. I'm sure he'll get through, but that one caught my eye. Botic is running hot right now and just has all the tools. Tiafo Chorich, I mean, JJ
Tough.
Baez,
It's
Kachanov
tough.
Altmaier, Minor Raonic. This is like I've never seen a set of first rounds like this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it should be pretty wild. Feels Beasley,
Yeah.
Safulin Greekspor, like how is Safulin not seeded? What? That's absurd. You got Humbert Goffin. I mean, I'm just literally reading
Reading the
consecutive match
draw.
after consecutive match. Dimitrov, Vucevic.
Yeah.
Offner is a guy who is really
Yes.
good. He has a high pressure rating on
Yeah.
ATP. He's playing cock. Um, dude,
It's
Team
tough.
FAA, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's
Yeah.
everywhere you look. It's a good match.
It's literally going to be a bloodbath on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, we can go through some of the predictions like down the line, but like I'm sure like some half of the like there's like 25, 50, like there's such a high chance that like there's going to be a ton of upsets, right? I mean, one of the guys that I think has a really, really difficult path is Holger. I mean, Holger first round has Nishioka, then he has Gare, I mean, dude, this guy could play like Safulin down the line. Like his draw is absolutely brutal. I think maybe like a good place to start is like going through some of I can talk through some of the quarterfinal picks that I've made. I have Djokovic Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals with Djokovic making through that one. I have Yannick
Wow, you have
Demonor.
Tsitsi going deep.
I do have Tsitsipas going deep, which is honestly like goes against what I was talking about with him falling out of the top 10. But I just think his draw doesn't phase me too much. Like he has Berrettini first round, which is a tough matchup. Then I think he's got like Vukic next round.
I think
Then he's
Thompson takes out Vukic, man.
yeah.
Thompson's
I
been
mean
hot too.
he
And then
has
I
been
think
hot.
another guy who's underrated is Van Ash. He's coming off of
Yes.
very good next gen World Tour finals.
Yeah.
I mean, any of these guys can beat Tsiitsi in my opinion. And then, I mean, if the seeds go through, he's playing Musetti,
Yeah.
who's another brutal one-hander.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like there's no guarantee that he can do this. Yeah, there's a ton of places for him to make upsets for some reason when I was going through this. Yeah, I had
You
him
had the
making
top seed going through.
I yeah, for a lot of them. So that's kind of why I had Tsitsipas there. But the only person I think that's probably surprising on the bottom half of the draw that I've had making through to the quarterfinals, not really surprising, but like unseeded is Roman Safulin. Like I think the guy, as you were saying, right? Like I don't, this guy should be seeded. This guy's balling right now, and so I have him making to the quarterfinals. And not to get into too far ahead, but like I have Novak winning this tournament and beating Carlos. So that's
Question, no question.
yeah. I don't in the bottom half of the draw, I'm not sure if anyone else can make it through. I was flirting with the idea of like having Yannick beat Novak, but then my senses came to me, so I put Novak winning through. But yeah, it should be a pretty exciting 2 weeks, and obviously you'll hear from us, or we'll chime in throughout the week talking about some of the matches and strategies and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the first rounds were so brutal and 50-50 that I can't even conceive of what the quarterfinals are going
Yeah,
to look like.
yeah,
Um, if I were to try to critique a little bit of this, I would probably have I mean, obviously Joker's going through, that's not even a question at the top here, but this second quarter is pretty tough, huh? Because you got T Frizzle as
yeah.
well in there.
Yes,
Um,
you do. Yeah.
and then you've got this insane first round match between Marozan and Cilic. And Cilic is
Yes.
he's a Grand Slam champion.
Yeah.
Um, I cannot. You also got Cerundolo there, who's
Yeah.
he's another guy who I think has a lot of talent. Does he have the mentality in big matches? It feels like sometimes he doesn't show up mentally. Um, CT isn't a bad pick, but oh man, I mean,
It's
this
tough.
is like
Yeah.
just straight 50-50s in my opinion, both first
Yeah.
and second and third round.
I will say, so speaking of that Marjan Cilic match, I have Marjan actually making the fourth round. I was thinking about putting Marjan in over Tsitsipas, but I remember looking at the first tournaments at the start of the year, and I think Marjan just lost so he lost to Ben, which is fine. He lost to Bautista in Hong Kong, and I mean, Bautista's actually playing Tommy Paul. No,
No, he's
Shelton,
playing
Ben
Ben.
Shelton.
Yeah, I
Yeah, he's
think he
playing
might
Ben
get through
for
Ben first round.
yeah, so I mean, that's tough, right? And so I didn't want to put Marjan beating Tsitsipas, but yeah, it's like take a bunch of 50-50s and then put them against another 50-50s. Probability of predicting is really, really low, but
Yep.
yeah, at some point it was like kind of guesswork, but
Yeah, how about this
yeah,
third quarter here? Sinner's quarter. I think he's going through toughest
yeah,
matches probably. There are a couple good seeds here with Tiafo, Catch, Demonor, it looks like.
yes, yeah,
But I mean, Demonor would be a great storyline, like you mentioned, in Australia doing some damage. I
yes,
just this is why I don't put my money on this kind of stuff, man. This is
yeah,
too many
yeah.
toss-ups.
No, it is. But we'll see. We'll see how the tournament goes. And yeah, I agree with you. There's just too many 50-50s, and I mean, you can make a case for literally either player. So
Yep. I think if I were to try and make more surprise calls here, I would definitely say Dimitrov catches fire. Let's say he takes out Fucsovics, gets through Kokkinakis or Offner.
yeah,
I could see him doing some damage here.
yeah,
Those are all matches that are winnable for him. I can even see him maybe taking out Medvedev potentially.
yeah,
Um, that might be a bit of a surprise. And then I think uh, bottom last quarter, I think Carlos has a pretty good draw in my opinion.
yes, I think so
Bublik is
too.
dangerous, probably the most dangerous out of anyone here. Obviously Tommy Paul's beaten him before, not going to happen in a slam.
Yeah,
I think Carlos is way too aggressive. So, and then Rude, I don't think is going to take him out in on a decently fast hard court, I should say.
yep, I agree. Um, Awesome. No, I think yeah, all great points. I think this is going to be in an electric Grand Slam. So I'm pumped. I mean, it's like the perfect way to start off the year, right? With these types of matches and this type of storyline. So a lot of sleepless nights for me. So I'm pumped.
Let's go.
Cool. Anything else we want to touch on?
No, let's try and get a mid tournament update.
Yep, we'll get a mid-tournament update and hopefully some really promising guests coming up. So we're stoked and we'll catch you on the other side. Peace.
See ya.